We have today Paul Choi and Adeel Mansoor. Paul, he's a well-known tech recruiter in Los Angeles. He recently joined as a part of Skillsjump. He previously worked at the companies like Cisco Meraki, Five9, Blackline. And Adeel is a director of engineering. We're gonna do the resume review and we're gonna do the mock interviews for whoever is wanna try their interviewing skills.
Paul, is this the first time we're doing one of these
Done one
together?
before with Evgeny. With you, the first time. So I'd love to see the interaction and the thoughts from the hiring perspective, or the hiring manager perspective. But yeah, this is the number 2.
I remember watching one of your webinars, I want to say maybe a year ago, maybe more. I don't remember exactly.
Right.
Dates blend together, right? When you're having fun. But it was super insightful. So it's great to have you here give that feedback, because always say who looks at most of the resumes, right? Usually not the hiring manager. Usually it is the person, it's the recruiter who's going through the resume. So it's always super, like, it's a second stage when it gets to hiring manager. Obviously the perspective, the two different perspectives are like really crucial. So super happy to be doing this today with you.
Meanwhile, Roger, I see you in the list. Can you give us like a little bit more context? What are you looking? Is it your resume, right? I'm sharing right now.
Yes, that's my resume. Actually, I'm looking for a backend developer position, especially in Java backend.
Okay. Ideal, Paul, you able to see, or you need to zoom in a little bit?
I'm able to
I
see
can
it.
see most of it. Yeah, I'm trying to fit it to my window here. And can you scroll down just a little bit?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Roger, you have one pager, right? Like one page.
Yes, that's one page.
Awesome. Great.
All right.
So
Yeah, go for it, Paul. You're the first person who looks at it. So
yeah. So you're absolutely right, Adeel. Like for me as a recruiter, it's always important for me to calibrate with somebody like Adeel. We're also just kind of going in the dark. So first off, every role is going to be a little bit different because the hiring manager is actually the person who makes the decision. I just happen to be that arm of that firsthand to filter out what I think they might like, what I think they might not like. Good recruiters will have that time to sync up with the hiring manager, really get those details. Some bad recruiters, which there are plenty of out there, they'll just look at it as a basic kind of a template, see if those basic blocks fit, throw it over the fence to Adeel, and then Adeel might say yes or no. So as a good recruiter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to Adeel, see what are the most important bits about this job. You mentioned, I think, Roger, you wanted to be a back end. So
yes,
you apply. Yep. If you applied for a back end or a full stack role, first thing I'm going to be looking for are those core skill sets, right? So you listed Java, Spring Boot, and React, right? So you want to highlight that at the top. First off, that first maybe top third, where your name, the ABC def summary, and that first experience, that's the most important. That's what I'm going to spend the majority of my time just to see if you're first qualified for enough to look further. Things that help me, this is probably more of a mock one, not your actual one, but are there any links, right? Hyperlinks to, let's say, LinkedIn. Let's say if you're a more junior person and you're in development, I'm going to look for those GitHub or projects that you've done. I'm not seeing any of those here. So if you have those embedded, make sure A, that they're pointing to the right sources, and B, that those links work and you have some content. Don't put it in there if your picture is, not great, or if your profile is not built up.
So you mean it's better to put the LinkedIn and GitHub link on the resume?
If you can embed it in there, it would be nice. But the problem is a lot of folks, they're sloppy. They'll put a hyperlink and it won't work. Or if you can embed it, it looks the best. If you just put one simple link in there, just make sure that you use that real estate wise. I like the summary in terms of having a very short kind of a natural just explanation of what you do in a nutshell, because that's the first thing we're going to read. I do like that you also put in your experience, the company, but also what type of company it is. I've seen more of those recently where, let's say I work for Blackline. Not everyone knows what Blackline is. So I would put next to Blackline a financial SaaS, fintech SaaS company, Fortune 500, something like that to highlight that company as well. That might really draw my attention to research that company a little bit and figure out that that's relevant experience. Yeah, and in terms of going into your first experience there, the first 4 bullet points, I like that you listed that utilize what technologies were involved in this. I do the fact that you put some ROI in there. I look for those numbers, right? So I automatically saw 10 video streams. Like for some reason, that's going to catch my attention. I look at that bullet point. Okay, you utilize RabbitMQ messaging as asynchronous communication. So I know that, okay, you're very familiar with messaging brokers and things like that. If that's a necessary part of the job, that would be a big plus, right? And the
Yes.
scale of it, right? So is this
Mm.
like a one-time thing? Is this something that you had to scale for multiple users, stuff like that? So I'm gaining clues from that. If it was a purely back-end role, I'd like to see more maybe back-end like things, but you don't want to over bullet point things either. You want to keep things maybe 2 up to 4 bullet points max, in my opinion. I'll pause here.
Okay.
I think that's
Mm.
a lot of info to throw at you. See if Adeel has any other insights for this.
Yeah, a lot of good information there from Paul. Yeah, if you are
Mm.
a junior developer, it is expected that you have your portfolio, right? If you're providing a LinkedIn link, make sure it's ready, but make sure there's some content there. But probably more important than that, have a link to your GitHub profile, like Paul was talking about. And just to expand on that a little bit, that gives, especially when an engineering manager is looking at it or a more senior member of the team is looking at it, it gives them a taste of what things you've done, and they can do that like
Mm.
pretty asynchronously without talking to you. So it's like a good way to showcase, get some attention, and get some good exposure to your resume. So I would, yeah.
Okay. So how about my personal website?
Yeah, personal website is
Mm.
good, but is your once in your on your personal website, do you have a link to your GitHub profile? Could somebody see the code
Yes.
for that, right?
Yes. I have a link to my GitHub and LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Exactly. So it's not as important that they go from resume to your GitHub. If they're going to your personal website and you have a link to your GitHub, they can just an
Mm.
idea is they can see a sample of the breadth of your work and like a sample of your code. That is good. Let's looking at your resume. Again, just if you have anything, so you have your personal website. Also, it may be you have experience, which is good. So you have added it in there, but it may be worth highlighting any projects that you've done that are interesting. Obviously, you have that personal website, the personal mathematics and computer blog website. But if you have anything else,
Mm.
and again, when you put those projects in there, be sure to highlight the impact of those what problem they were looking to solve, and include a GitHub link to that code. That's usually like the best practice when you're more junior. The last thing is perhaps, I don't know, and maybe I'll ask like Paul and Evgeny if they have a thought on this. Like this doesn't have a skills section. Sometimes skills section can be pretty useless. It's nice that you've highlighted like within each one and you've highlighted how
Mm.
you've used it. So I'm a little torn whether you should have it or not, but I'm really interested in hearing from Evgeny or Paul. How do they feel about having a skills section?
I'll jump in there. Absolutely. I think some of the skill section, React, Java, Spring Boot, takes the place of that. I like to personally see a very nicely kind of crafted skill section, meaning that it has to be stack ranked where you highlight your most strongest skills, right? And also maybe the fact that you don't want to put too much older technologies or non-relevant technologies in there. I've seen people put fillers like Excel and stuff. Don't want to do that, or super old technologies.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really care if COBOL, but I guess in some jobs it's really important. What else were you saying, Adeel, in terms of, one thing
Mm.
this is off topic, but I do want to see more maybe like action verbs. So like implemented, self-initiated project, those are strong, like, utilized, but I want to see like leading projects or things that like maybe show that you're impact introduced or transformed or changed something. I want to see more collaboration in there as well. Were you a one-man show? Was it like a full team-based kind of development environment where there's testing, where there's a product, there's people maybe with conflicting interests, right? That you have to balance priorities and things like that. So I want to see like the scale of things. Is it like a very small project? Oh, last thing, back on Adeel's topic,
Mm.
GitHub. Don't put the GitHub if you're not active on it. I've seen people put GitHub and like they have 2 submissions. If you are active in open source, if you've contributed and it's something that you actually want us to see, then put it. If it's like blank slate just with your profile info, it's better to put something else. Where are you active in? Are you active in other forums? Put those instead.
Yeah, I have a couple additional things here. So under personal mathematics block website, it more looks like I would put it into your professional engineering experience because technically this is your another project that you've been working on.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a little bit confusing like when I was reading it. So yeah, just put it under professional experience under your projects that you've been building it for. Yes, I heard from several actually tech recruiters. This is the section. And again, like this is very subjective. I personally thought before that it was useless instead of showing them in the description of the experience. But it makes sense because this is very easy to catch. Is it the skills you possessing that recruiters are looking for? So instead of reading line by line in your summary and your experience, highlight, as Paul just said, like very nicely put it the skill section under the summary.
Another reason, Evgeny, that you might want to put a skill section is nowadays, especially larger companies, are using applicant tracking systems that are stack ranking candidates just simply by parsing your resume and seeing if you fill in all the keywords that they're right. You're not gaming the system, but they are putting you at the top of the list for the recruiter to look at, especially if it's a high volume role where, for example, at Meraki, we did have something like that in place because we just got so many applications. If we're getting 500 to 600 applications for a back-end engineer, we do need some computer assistance for that. So you do maybe want to put that. But the way, as a good recruiter, I would qualify against that is if you are at the top of my list, I'm looking, okay, you have all the keywords. I'm going to go right to your experience section and see if you actually have used those skills or tools in that actual job, right? If you put Python everywhere and you don't have one bullet point where you utilize Python in a way, I'm not saying that's not relevant, but I might have to dig into that further, right? So unless it really stands out, I might even pass on your resume just because okay, you put all these things there, but in any of your jobs, I don't see you using it. So I want to see those match up as well.
Yeah, totally 100% agree with that. All right. Anything else, Roger? Yeah, I think the most difficult part would be the fundamental because for us, when we getting job orders or like when we have requirements from engineering managers, most of the time people are looking for experienced folks, right? So this is fundamental problem that you must tackle the first, how you can put more relevant stuff in under your professional experience. Otherwise, those are very good tips and hits, but if you're not gonna work on the fundamental, they won't help you.
Yeah. Think about the resume as just as a door opener, right? You're not gonna put your whole life story there. Put one or two things that are really gonna catch my eye so I can pass you along to Adeel and he will try to like dig into those things that stand out, right? Oh, this is really cool. Let me peel back the layers of that onion, ask 2 or 3 more questions, see if you're BSing me on that. If it's legit, that one bullet point could get you over. You don't have to put you're a master of XYZ, all these different skill sets. One thing can really get you your foot in the door.
All right. Yeah, Roger, good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your help.
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure. Let's move forward with the next resume in our list. I have, oh, by the way, just one more time, guys. If you came straight from meetup.com, post your resume in our Slack channel. The link on this of the Slack channel also in the meetup.com. Yeah. And this is where our queue is. So the next person is Sylvan. Let me allow you to talk.
Hello.
Hey, Sylvan, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me share my screen time with your resume. I think this is yours, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So the basic story here, I'm looking for either a senior PM or a senior dev position, or potentially lead engineer position. So the idea of this resume is I have 30 years experience, but I wanted to fit on a page and I stuck to the last roughly 15 years because there is a mix of PM and dev in there. This is also my base resume, depending on whether I apply for an engineering position or PM position. I adapted a bit. So if I applied for a dev position, there would be more discussion of the languages and the tech stack. It would be more obvious in there. But this is the core resume, I would say, before I adapted to whatever I'm applying for.
Love it. Awesome. And overall, I like the layout of the resume. Looks really nice and clean. I think when you are like a senior cross-functional tech person, it sets the bar a little bit higher, that you want something that's easily readable, digestible. Overall, I think also just to highlight this for other people who may be listening in, it's also like a little bit of a privilege having worked at big tech companies where a lot of the resumes are like a little bit, I would say, like comparison, like we were talking about like the candidate before or other candidate. It's a privilege to be able to just highlight the company names and the stuff you worked on and keep it really brief. Hey, this is like a really, really good resume in that way. A lot of good things are included here. The only thing I would like mention for you, like the thing that pops out to me, is the impact you have it. You have some of the impact on your most recent DevOps experience. And 90% of main branch changes within 2 hours, double throughput, it's good to quantify that impact, do that for more of your positions, and also give more context on that. What was the business value? What did it help drive? 90% of main branch changes within 2 hours. What does that mean for the lead time for the teams that you were supporting? Did it reduce the lead time by 5%, 10%? So add more of that, more of those data-driven things. I would also consider a little bit, I think just a little bit of, and I think you have sprinkled that all over around like skills, but I would think about like highlight if there's anything else you want to highlight. But overall, I think if you just focus on like that impacts and a little bit of context of that impact, like what was the business value, those things will make it easier for anybody reviewing it. The other thing, I think, just one question for you, what kind of positions are you targeting? Are you targeting big companies, small startups? What is your focus?
Right now, it's been both big tech and startups. I haven't really started the big stuff in the middle yet. So it's been a mix of both.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I think just with anybody, it's just the way the system works. If somebody has a lot of skills that are a lot of relevant skills in like different areas, it's like the negative of that is it might be a little bit harder for somebody to say, oh, they're looking for a senior software engineer looking to work on like desktop design applications. They may look at yours and compare somebody.
But I think Adeel.
Did we freeze?
Yeah, I think connection, something like that.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Paul, maybe you can catch up.
Yeah. First off, great resume, Sylvain, just because you took the concept of less is more, right? Keep it simple. Let us explore things further if we engage with you. So your profile is definitely some profile I'd look into further. So I guess the next questions are, and in my mind as just the first impressions would be that you're much stronger as a software engineer. It would take much more for me to view you as a seasoned product manager, just because I don't see a lot of the product like management kind of duties. Maybe you have those, but you probably want two separate resumes. They go two separate ways, right? I'd be exploring your LinkedIn profile a little bit further at this point, probably going in there. You've been at Adobe so long. I do want to see maybe, and this is not a deal breaker, but if you have like references or endorsements, bottom of your LinkedIn page from previous colleagues, right? Saying that you've worked with them. Adobe's so big. I'd like to know maybe a little bit more about the domain or the vertical that you serviced. I'm gleaning that you were part of infra or platform engineering from 21 to 24, maybe part of more like feature, like desktop engineering, 14 to 21, maybe having a little explanation of what Express DevX DevOps kind of covers, like maybe for an idea to get the size of that org. And also, I think Adeel hit a good point in terms of, yes, like I'm impressed by 90% of main branch changes within 2 hours. You double throughput, maybe like showing the increase, right? Showing the change. What was it before? What was the baseline? And then you having that improvement in there, right? Can you scroll a little bit towards the first third? So obviously you probably have some links embedded in there, your contact info, engineering, product manager, and mentor on major shipping. Yeah, I like the statement there, but maybe for the engineering one, like less focus on product management, right? It's like either or situation.
Yeah.
I don't want to jack of all trades. Some positions like architect might be great to have that product manager perspective. But if you're going for hands-on IC roles or senior tech lead type of roles, they're going to drill into those tech things. Like you mentioned Python, Docker, Kubernetes, they're going to want to know, were you just using it? Did you implement it? Did you run into really complex issues with deployment or configuration of these things? Who handled them? Like you're highlighting them, but wasn't there a DevOps side that would do the Kubernetes things? These are the questions that might be during your phone screen.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah, and the benefit to that is if you have a separate one, so let's say your last position on like DevOps focus, developer experience focus, what you can do there is then highlight, if you have that as my guess is you're going for more technical product management roles, you can highlight then that you took some project like soup to nuts that resulted in this benefit, then you can highlight some of your product/project management skills, because that may not be as relevant or as interesting when you're going for senior engineer roles. So something to think about, some benefits of having two different resumes, even though it's the same experience, you're highlighting slightly different things. You're helping the reader look at things with a slightly different lens, which helps them makes the connection between you and success at the job that they have.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe there's different types of pain points and KPIs, right? I'm not too familiar with the product world, but I know like product roles, I would see things like NPS, like net promoter scores, different like churn rates, right? Like A/B testing. I see less of that for the technical side, like for developer role. So yeah, maybe having, and I'm sure you have the experience to try to line up for both types of roles, but they're so different. So you can't probably just have one to cover both types of.
Yeah, I can add here two things. Compared to the first, obviously, resume that we saw, the first resume was very nice organized, but it was lacking with fundamentals, right? Like experience. You is actually the opposite. You have great experience, so it's more forgiving for you to have not that organized resume. And I see a lot of white space here, white field. It seems like your resume is too clean for your years of experience. And that would be the first thing. Also, the same thing with the skills section. Please add this. Don't ignore the skills section. And the second part is you have, again, like I think Paul already covered, instead of being jack of all trades, be like more specific, because most of the time, some hiring managers, some engineering managers, they're saying, oh yeah, we language agnostic, we're just looking for senior engineer with certain level of experience. But like most of them, they are looking, oh, we are looking for Java, for example, senior level, principal level Java experience, right? So this kind of things I would prefer you highlight it, what kind of technologies you are the most proficient and the most passionate about it. So it would be easier, like for any recruiters, they would be searching for, let's say, principal engineer, Python. I just read it on second line. So yeah, try to catch this early and instead of skimming your resume.
And one thing that is sometimes throwing me off, I only see the years. There's no months. So you may want to put the months of the employment there, just to clarify. Any promotions, like coming from, if you're just senior software engineer the whole time, that's totally fine. Some people want to stay within that one track. That's what they're comfortable with. They don't want to be a manager or tech lead. But if you ever got promoted, sometimes it's good to point that out. The career progression within Adobe as well.
And I think this is like highlighting there's so much, resumes have so much space to, there's so many different types of resumes. They'll get you interviews and they'll get you job offers, and you don't have to do it exactly. I would maybe not disagree, but like just highlight a little bit, like if you're applying to companies that are very like design centric, for them aesthetics may be more important than other. And this is aesthetically, this is a very pleasing resume, but you could have somebody else. So you never know. I always say, be true to yourself. Look at it from your brand, but also just statistics. Which type of positions are you applying for? What gives you the biggest bang for your buck? ROI as far as your resume. Overall, I really like it. And yeah, the big one, I think this takeaway from is like to have two different ones for your product-centric roles and your engineer-centric roles that you're applying. Some of the companies or some of the people I've known who've been at companies where there might be back-end engineers or like developer experience focused on developer-focused engineering, developer experience-focused teams, they like people who are like detail-oriented and everything is like very, just that aesthetic side of things. It just depends from team to team, company to company, person to person. So I don't necessarily think you have to like optimize for any of it, but just know that when it comes to resume, there's a huge sweet spot. There are very little wrong things you can do, but those wrong things really can mess you up and hold you back.
And Sylvain, one quick call out is for senior roles, tech lead roles, a lot of them focus around communication, mentorship, and leadership. I saw a lot of like great hands-on stuff, maybe a bullet point or two regarding how you've upscaled not just yourself, but like the rest of your team, right? How did you elevate that project, that group to meet those deliverables or meet those metrics that are hard to
that's
reach,
good.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, great resume. Lots of good experience. I saw mobile, I saw desktop, I saw web. All those experiences can line up to be really somebody who knows a lot of context about other teams' pain points, which is super good.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. That was really good.
Thanks so much, Sylvan. All right, we have next person. Joseph, you on?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Is this your resume, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. We have to do a lot of backend.
Okay. Paul, you want to go first?
Yeah, I like it. Good job, Joseph. First thing, I see 3 professional summaries, so it's like a little bit too much. Choose one, consolidate that. It should be maybe a little bit more about you as well, passionate about. Skill section, I like that. So I think you kept that to the core. You listed C, I think C development, like C language in your recent job at Lockheed. Don't see that at all at the skill section. It's a pretty good skill set to have, C or C++. Again, if you're putting in the skill section, you're opening it up for us to dive further, like how much do you actually know? Especially if you put Java, SQL, or databases as those top things, like I'm going to want to explore those. Yeah, I see lots of great like action verbs, right? Like developed, collaborated, debug. Maybe put some ROI in there, like how much did you like the improvements, right? Like the previous ones that showed like the number of PRs or reducing the deployment time or reducing testing by this much. Kind of want to show like those actual solid numbers.
Okay. What if I don't have quantifiable data?
I wouldn't say make one up, but try to go for a best guess. We're not like gonna, how do we verify that? So something that can give you an idea of the overall efforts that you put in it and how that improved things, that might help. Yeah. I'm a little thrown off by all the stuff after Lockheed Martin. It's a little messy, like software engineer, secret clearance, C, virtual machines, Linux. That's a whole bag in itself. So maybe like weave that somehow into the bullet points. I can already assume, right? If you're a software engineer, like at Lockheed, you might need secret clearance. I don't know how important that is. Like virtual machines. Yes, obviously everybody uses like a containerizer or VM setup. See how relevant those things are, right? You're just adding to real estate sometimes because those skill sets, they're listed under skills, right? So duplication of things sometimes as well. But since your experience, yeah, I would be also looking into your profile at this point. Okay, you caught my attention, Joseph. I'm going to go into your LinkedIn now, see if all these little bullet points match up to what you did, or if you have endorsements for those skill sets. So I'm going to be snooping around a little bit. Hopefully you uploaded GitHub, something like that. Stack Overflow. I want to see contributions, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there too many bullet points? Earlier you mentioned about 2 to 4.
I'd say right on the cusp. Like you have 5 in the first one, like 6 in the second one. It's a little long to read, but at the same time, yeah, you could probably consolidate those like to less bullet points. Adeel, you got anything?
Yeah, I think this is the type of resume, if I got it as a hiring manager, I would be just, yeah, let's talk to this person. If you went through the recruiter screening and recruiter picked up on your resume. So I would really just pick up on things that Paul are saying that are probably more important for you. It's how you're going to differentiate yourself from all the other resumes your recruiter, the recruiter or someone like Paul has to shift through. Overall, from my perspective, I'd be like, yes, if Paul forwarded this to me, I'd be, yes, let's talk to this person. But I think your challenge is to differentiate yourself between all the other resumes that Paul is reviewing for a position that you would be suitable for.
Adeel, I have a question for you. As your recruiter, let's say, and I'm seeing Joseph's resume. Obviously, Lockheed stands out to me. That's a great organization. They have great processes in place, great coding standards, but I'm seeing a gap, right? So November 2023 was the last work. Would that cause enough concern for you to say, okay, before I talk to Joseph, before we engage, let's find out what he's been doing? Because that's about, I think, about a 9, almost a 10-month gap or more at this. Should he fill in something before that? Would it help for him to say, have a project-based stuff or freelancing? I hate to call it a filler, but say, a non-full-time.
Yeah, I would say, like, from a good hiring manager perspective, and I think there's also a question in the chat around that. So good manager perspective, usually breaks are not something that I will over index on, especially if this person has been vetted by the recruiter already. But having said that, especially if your gap is more recent, I think it's good to highlight and take on any personal projects that you can highlight that were going on at the time, right? Those could be, especially when you're like more junior, that's slightly different if you're more senior. But if you're more junior, you should be looking to like continuously upskilling yourself. And the benefit of that is it shows a lot of like this person has a lot of desire, right? They're learning and they're constantly growing. And it highlights that piece. It covers that gap a little bit as well, that they were not. Because what happens with any gap is it leads, and everybody has their own, like we can talk about like conscious and subconscious bias, but in your head, anytime you have a gap, you're going to tell yourself a story. And that could be very subconscious. And what you don't want is from a resume to have a lot of like stories that are not relevant to your ability to get an interview or have a screening call with the recruiter. So I would say those are really good things. Instead of employment, you can just change it to experience. If there's been something you've been working on this whole time, also the benefit of those and highlighting that with your personal projects as well is then you can also send people to the code repository because it's a personal project, right? That's powerful. So you can fill in with things like that. You could be working on an open source project, a personal project, or even like starting up your own business, whatever the case may be, or exploring that. And that's going to have a lot better play. So long-winded answer, Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, 100% agree. Just took a last glance at Joseph's resume. I also recognize that a lot of the bullet points are general, like they're very generic duties, right? These are tasks that might come up not just at Lockheed, but any software engineer role at any level. So you want to differentiate that. Go back to Joseph's resume real quick, Evgeny. Sorry, I was just on a train of thought there. So, for example, collaborated cross-functional teams to design and implement new features that enhance system functionality. Maybe tell us what feature it was, like what the functionality was in a nutshell, so we know, it's not just like some random button or like a widget that you'd have to fix. I want something a little bit more meaty than that. And you said you don't have ROIs, but hey, you debugged and resolved software issues, optimizing performance. By how much? Like, you know those baseline numbers, right? So reducing system downtime by 20%, 30%, or X hours, that kind of stands out a little bit more, right?
Okay.
Yeah, just maybe get a little bit more specific into the work at Lockheed, because you guys were doing really interesting stuff. So I want to know, what was the project? Were you guys building a plane? Was it a satellite? Was it like a mapping system? These are cool things that could really open up new conversations with that recruiter or that hiring manager.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for employment with Lockheed specifically, just the nature of the work doesn't give you too much room to explain like legally. So that's why it's rather generic. Aside from
Without
that,
revealing like NDA stuff, maybe like the nature of the project or complexity of the project, right? How many users, how many.
Yeah, Paul,
Mhm.
Paul is exactly right. I mean, you can, again, it's the other part of it. Like you're helping paint a picture, stay within obviously 110%, stay within your NDA, all of that, but you can highlight it in other ways. You can start to paint a picture in other ways. This is something that helped users be more efficient. It increased efficiency.
Okay.
And obviously be consistent with your NDA, but give a little bit of more color. Especially just keep in mind it's only a 9-month experience, right? That does work against you. What you want to be able to do is like the impact you had in that 9 months, be able to highlight. Because in 9 months, you probably didn't work on 19 features. That's just a reality, my guess. So you want to be able to highlight the things. And these are also, this whole other idea. When you're building your resume, also look at, do you have one or two things that are good conversation starters in your resumes, especially if you're applying at startups and you're like interviewing with like founders or something. So all of that stuff helps you in multiple ways to paint a better.
Okay. And one other question regarding the employment section. You were mentioning just due to the gap, even though it's not, I guess, super important. It's just knowing that you're continuously learning and growing as a developer. That's important. I have all that showcased on my LinkedIn, which I have links to my LinkedIn and GitHub on my normal resume. I just excluded that from this one. Is that sufficient enough? And like my posts and what I've been posting on that and GitHub sufficient enough? Or should I be including that on my resume as well?
It's a tricky question. Play around with it. I would say ask people, like ask mentors, other senior people, that other peers from maybe other folks who have graduated with you at the same time from school. You have to play around with that a little bit. But I think what you can do is highlight like your personal projects. You can put a date to them and highlight them as experience, but play around with it. It could also look very awkward. Ask people for help. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn if you want me to look at it. I'd be happy to give you feedback, but do a little A/B. Come up with 2 new formats, and then you can see which one's working better.
Honestly,
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Honestly, guys, I have philosophy about filling the gap, because just what Adil said, it creates a lot of unnecessary stories in the head of recruiters, hiring managers, whoever is reading this one. If it's not more than 1 year, I would probably just leave it as you are still there. And I would explain it during the interview, because you basically, a lot of times, you're cutting yourself out when recruiters or hiring managers, they see it, oh, he didn't work. He's not working, right? Maybe we have a better, stronger candidate. But once you start talking to, you have a chance to explain this, or if you will. So it gives you better position. But again, you have to have a good story as well. Like you have to have.
And to cut in there a little bit, Evgeny, Joseph, are you getting callbacks on this resume? Are you getting callbacks from like recruiters on your resume right now?
I'm getting primarily headhunted.
Headhunted. Okay. So that's what Evgeny said is an excellent point. Even if your resume doesn't reflect it and you're getting callbacks, build that story into, like most recruiter conversation starts with, tell me about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
weave that in there. Talk about your projects, but like maybe finish up with talking about any of the cool things you've done in the last 6 months that are relevant to the position you're applying for, right? So customize that with it. That's going to be powerful. That's going to stick with the recruiter, and they're more likely to refer you ahead. They'll be more likely to go on your behalf with the hiring manager saying, yeah, I see a gap, but I see somebody who's really curious. I see somebody explain in a lot of detail some of the projects they're working on. I love that advice I'm getting by.
Okay.
David, you up, and I'll work on bringing.
So you want to tell us a little bit about that, David? What kind of roles you're
Yeah.
targeting, and a little bit about your break? How would you introduce yourself if this was your resume? Trying to
Sure.
explain a little bit.
Well, I'm a senior QA engineer, 7 year experience. I've done all kinds of QA testing, front end systems and back end, and my main programming language is Java. The problem that I've been having is that in May 2023, I got laid off from a contract, and the contract just ended all of a sudden. And then I tried to be an entrepreneur. I actually wasn't just the owner of LS Mini Pancake, but I also had a video production company, and I decided to take that out. It would just be too much. And now I'm barely able to get any interviews. I used to, with the worse resume than this, I used to get so many inquiries back in 2022. And the difficulty is obviously that my latest experience is not QA engineer. So as a recruiter, I probably wouldn't pick myself either.
Yeah, definitely it can be tough. I think overall, like looking at that, you need to work on the formatting of your, and I don't know, obviously laid off, focusing on your entrepreneurial skills, that takes a lot out of it, but you definitely need to work on the formatting of this resume. And the reason I highlight that, and hopefully this will make it more clear why that's going to be beneficial for you, because you see your relevant experience, like your senior QA experience is like at the bottom of first page. Think in terms of real estate. You are trying to use this resume to apply for QA engineer positions, not just from experience perspective, but cognitively. Folks have to wait to like get to the relevant experience, like technical support engineer, entrepreneur. So you're going to have to figure out a way to format it a lot better so that they can get to the QA experience much faster. What I would suggest here, and again, these are like, I want to say there's no right or wrong here necessarily, just one suggestion in my mind how you can format a little bit better. And then obviously I would love feedback from Paul and Evgeny on this. Instead of highlighting, you're trying to highlight the way I would describe it, a sabbatical from QA engineering to focus on entrepreneur, what's the word I'm missing, but entrepreneur journey. Exactly. Thank you. Just put that in there. Just say that instead of like CEO, owner, Ella's Mini Pancakes, Florida, Orlando, Florida, you can just say sabbatical, work on the words, but like sabbatical, entrepreneur journey focus, whatever the right words may be.
To be honest,
Huh?
I would remove it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to help you out to get a QA job for sure. It's a distraction. In other words,
talking about like video editing, some of your other is going to be much more. It's going to be much more relevant. Like it's the detail about, and this is something I was talking about last time in the webinar with everybody, right? When we write our resumes, and this is so true of me, everything I put on my resume, there's emotions attached to it. And this is great that you're getting this feedback, but get feedback from other people as well. It's just taking too long to get to, in this market, your last position being May 2023. That's not a huge gap in this current market. So allow people to get to that sooner. It's gonna help you. I know you invested a lot into your restaurant business, but it's just not going to be super relevant here. And it's just causing people not to be able to get to the cool, interesting stuff, which is your QA experience.
Yeah, I agree. As a recruiter, the Ella's Mini Pancakes throw me off. It's great to have entrepreneurship and that you're like self-motivated. Let that come up during the first call with the hiring manager. It's like an interesting side note, right? We all know job market's been crap. So again, nowadays, year's like having a 3-month gap, honestly, especially if you've gotten certs like they were talking about before, if you've contributed open source, if you've been staying technical, that's really and 100% agree. The meaty stuff in your resume, it's buried. You're doing yourself a disadvantage by not really showing what you've done in the most recent past. ADT is impressive. Going down to able to, I'm looking at those further versus looking at what you're currently doing as technical support engineer. Yes, that's paying the bill, and maybe change the technical support engineer to highlight some of those technical skill sets, right? Are you doing a little bit of scripting? Are you using Python? Are you debugging code? Are you having to look code on a daily basis? That's what's relevant. The title is like less. And maybe if you really are concerned about that title difference, just put contract. Like, this is a contract role. I'm taking what I can right now, but this is filling in the time before I look for my next kind of passion, which is in quality assurance testing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
automation.
missed, I missed this part. David is looking for a QA automation position, or
Yeah,
Yeah,
back
I
into
am.
QA.
I put this technical support engineer up there for you to, I wanted to get the reaction. I have another resume where I took it out. This is my actual experience. So just really helpful seeing that you want me to just basically condense all that or even take it out. I have a resume where my last position was May 2023 and I just didn't get anything.
Mhm.
Any.
it's the same, right, Paul? It's the same as with the previous resume. Very similar.
This one's a little bit more meaty in terms of you've been a QA engineer for 5+ years before. Yeah, technical support engineer. I'm looking troubleshoot hardware, software issues, install, configure hardware. Elaborate on those more versus it's not just a help desk type of role. They hired you as a TSE because probably your experience as a QA. So what are you still flexing still today that relate to that? Also your skills. Like it's a little bit, I don't know, I feel like it's disorganized. Under web automation, putting frameworks, you're putting tools, you're putting languages. Like maybe there's a different way to categorize this. And some of the stuff might be a little bit outdated. I don't know. Are we still
The
using
format,
Windows 7?
yeah,
Stuff like that.
it needs to be start your skills section from scratch. The other thing is, again, I don't think this necessarily hurts your chances of being hired. So it is a little bit of a nitpick. But just to call it out, you're using a different font for your skills section than rest of your resume. That is, again, it adds to a cognitive load if something's not adding. When you do things like that, it adds to a cognitive load when somebody's reviewing it, and they're just, again, recruiters are spending how much time on your resumes? They're spending like seconds to decide if they want to spend 30 more seconds on it, right? That's what's happening with the resume. So seems to me like you copy paste it from somewhere. You need to fix again, I don't think it necessarily hurts or helps your chances, but you want as clean of a resume as possible. And you're using different font for your skills section than the rest of your resume. Was there a design decision there, David, or just missed?
No, it was basically a resume that I threw together for this particular meeting. I have another one where everything is in the right format, but it has different experience on it, and I want to make sure to get it in here before this meeting. So I appreciate that feedback, though. This is super helpful. And in terms of the other positions, does that look okay with 4 bullet points?
Just too much. You don't need to put sales account executive in there. You could probably delete the DARPA experience. Just get it down to the most recent, like 5 years. Try to highlight those. I don't want to see 5 bullet points from a job like 5 years ago. Keep the bullet points consistent in terms of the theme, right? So if you have a bullet point regarding these 3 things, like skills used, whatever, like stay consistent. Like I want to see like a similar structure with all the roles, right?
Yeah. Also, you have, even though you're concise, you have very few bullet points. Again, this is harsh, David. I know. Again, it's a nitpick. It has fluff in it. Those bullet points have fluff in it. So think about the impact you were having, if there's impact worth highlighting. As an example, collaborative, like DARPA 2017 experience, you're writing collaborated with DevOps teams to optimize testing workflows. Not super interesting. If you want to if you take something like compared to like able to, you have a little bit more color there. But again, you have like collaborated with cross-functional teams to ensure software quality. Like those are given kind of thing. So
Yeah, like how did you
replace those bullet
collaborate?
points with impact. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Adeel brought up a really good point. I even haven't read bullet by bullet, but when I start reading, yeah, there's a lot of fluff that you need to either remove or rewrite them into more meaningful, right? If I would be in your shoes, this is what I would do. Adeel, can you scroll up a little bit? Yeah, definitely. Like I would remove everything which is not related to the position that you are looking for, or I would rewrite them to target for this position. As Paul brought up, technical support engineer, I would probably focus and point it out only everything which is related to test automation. So think about it. Have you done this? Put it in a nicely way that you've been doing as a test engineer. Because hiring managers, they're not doing the stories and then not making up the stories for you. They need someone who can solve their problem. They need someone who can come and have a great QA engineer, right? Same thing we just mentioned, remove CEO owner. It does help unless if you will become only the owner of your company and you don't need any other job. That's it. and make it in one and a half page, or one page would be more than enough. Again, make it format, because in your case you have fundamentals, you have good experience that people are looking for. You need to package it more presentable. Just show that you're a great test engineer, QA engineer. That's it. That's your main goal, nothing else. Hope it helps.
Helps a whole lot. I'm very
Yeah.
motivated now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the right track. Looks good. Like you can tell right off the bat, you're a seasoned quality assurance, you're a seasoned engineer. Update that skill section, get rid of the fluff, and use that real estate really valuably. Everybody agrees. To even this is way too long, so shorten that, and I think you'll have a good response from just those initial changes.
We should ask, actually, you can copy the first resume that we have today. I think the format of the first resume, actually with the least experience, I believe, right? Straight off the personal projects and Canva or course. But the format of the resume itself, I think that was, in my opinion, it was the best format. Like the structure, it's very well organized, very well thoughtful about the white spaces. They don't use a lot of white spaces. So yeah, copy that format and use that one. Sure. All right, guys, I think we can wrap it up. David, thank you very much for participating. I hope you will get as soon as possible your next gig. Yeah. So follow us in our meetup group, follow us in our Slack channel. I saw there, again, I said it, a couple more resumes. We haven't worked through that today. So you'll be the next person in line for the next mock interview and resume review. So today we didn't have the mock interviews. I guess today it's always like very intimidating part. But if you're searching, I highly recommend you utilize Paul, utilize Adeel, who came here, who actually doing the interviews, real interviews on the daily basis. Every day, tons of interviews. So yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next mock interview resume review session. Thank you, Adeel. Thank you, Paul, for coming, for helping.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.